Hello and welcome to the F1 News Zone, the show we round up all the biggest stories in Formula 1 right now. We're currently in the Chinese Grand Prix weekend where there's already been some huge shocks in Formula 1's first sprint race of 2025. But which stories have caught our attention this week? This week we react to Helmut Marko's criticism of Isack Hadjar's emotional moment at the Australian Grand Prix. Have Ferrari fixed their issues from Australia? It certainly appears so, going off of the sprint qualifying. And we also pay tribute to the late, great Eddie Jordan, who tragically passed away earlier this week. If you're watching on YouTube, skip to the timestamps in the video to watch the story you're most interested in. So, without further ado, let's dive in. So not for the first time here on this channel, we need to talk about Dr. Helmut Marko, who has made some what I would call embarrassing comments. Not the thing that he is describing as embarrassing, but he himself has been quite embarrassing and pathetic with what he's said. So for those that don't know, for those that didn't see the Australian Grand Prix early on Sunday morning, Isack Hadjar very much had a debut to forget in Formula 1. He ended up crashing out on the formation lap to the grid, didn't even start the race, and was very, very upset as a result. It was really, really hard to watch. A 20-year-old young man, barely a man at that age, you know, someone making their debut in Formula 1, all that hype, all that expectation, all the pressure of being in a Red Bull team. Of course, he drives for the Racing Bulls, does Hadjar, and he broke down and cried. Now, this is not the first time we've seen a Formula 1 driver break down and cry on the track. Remember Mika Häkkinen back in Italy 1999, I want to say, where he crashed out from the lead. And of course, at that time, you know, he was 30 odd years old, a very experienced Formula 1 driver and a world champion. This is, like I say, he's 20 years old, is Isack Hadjar. And at that moment, what he needed was an arm around his shoulder, someone to comfort him. And he got that in the form of Anthony Hamilton, Sir Lewis Hamilton's father. And of course, Hamilton is Isack Hadjar's racing hero. You know, he said many, many times now that, you know, Hamilton is the guy that he's always looked up to. And now he'll compete against him on the track. I mean, he'll hopefully do that for the first time in China this weekend coming up. And Anthony Hamilton rightfully got a lot of praise for what he did. You know, he went up to him in the paddock and basically put an arm around his shoulder and said, "It's going to be all right, kid. You know, you're going to be fine." In fact, I'll just get the exact quote here on ESPN that Anthony Hamilton said he talked about, because on the live coverage we saw it, but I couldn't quite hear what was being said. Anthony Hamilton, that is, said the following about this. He said, "When I saw it happen, my heart just sank for him," he told Sky Sports News. Not just for him, for his parents, for everything they've done to work hard to get this 1 point, and it's like it's snatched from you. I just feel terrible for him. So I thought, you know what? I need to go and tell this kid, keep your head high, walk tall, you're going to come back. I think he's a phenomenal driver. I think there's more to come from Isack than we probably have seen this weekend. And Christian Horner, who's the boss of Red Bull, echoed this as well. He said, "It was quite heart-wrenching to see him so gutted in his first Grand Prix. I think the positives he needs to take out of it when he reflects on the weekend. He performed very well through the practices and the qualifying. You forget that these guys are really just kids. Obviously, a lot of emotions for him today, but I think when he strips it back, there is an awful lot of positives he can take out of the weekend. He's got so many bright days ahead of him." So those are relatively sane comments. They are absolutely fine, you know. Christian Horner being a voice of reason, Anthony Hamilton being a voice of reason. But Helmut Marko, Dr. Helmut Marko. Now, I talk about this guy a lot. Now, I actually kind of defended him a little bit recently. I said that a lot of the things he says in the press, I don't think he truly believes. And I think he's just trying to play the public, play the other teams, a bit of gamesmanship. Some people don't like that. I don't have a huge problem with it in general, but Marko has said some stuff that is rather controversial, to say the least, in the recent past. Remember his South American comments about Sergio Perez, who, by the way, is Mexican. He's not even South American. And what Marko said was borderline racist, I would say. But anyway, that is a different issue. Let's talk about what he said about Hadjar, because this has really enraged me, to be honest with you. And I don't know if that's the aim of what he said, but I think what he said is totally inappropriate, to be honest. Marko said to ORF, "Isack did a little bit of crying after his crash. That was a bit embarrassing." Now, like Horner said, And I can't believe I am sticking up for Christian Horner and agreeing with Christian Horner on it. But he's right. These guys are relative kids. They are so inexperienced at life in general at 20 years old. You don't know what's going on in the world. You think you do, but you don't. You got a lot of growing up still to do at that age. Now, for anybody who has watched Isack Hadjar in the junior series, as I have done extensively, you would know that he is very much a young man who wears his heart on his sleeve. His radio outbursts obviously do catch the headlines, but he's a very emotional young man as well. When things go great, he celebrates like it's won the world championship, and you know, all power to him. Good on you, kid. If that's how you want to do it, go and do it. But he's also someone on the flip side of things that is very emotional as well, and we saw that on Sunday. There is no problem with him having that reaction. That is his emotions. He is a human being, right? Simple as that. There's nothing wrong with men crying. Simple as that. And for Marko to go out there and say that it was embarrassing, no. Hadjar himself, I'm pretty sure he directly said that his driving was embarrassing, but his actions, his emotions after that were not embarrassing. They were a normal human's reaction to what was an extremely disappointing thing. You think about what this kid has had to do. I know that some people will say, well, these are Formula One drivers. They're all made of money. They're minted. That might be the case now for some of them, not all of them. You'd be surprised, right? They're well off, don't get me wrong, but they are not mega rich unless you're the Lewis Hamiltons, the Fernando Alonsos, or the Max Verstappens, the world champions of the world. The lower down drivers, the rookies in particular, a lot of them aren't, right? And a lot of them do come from not the richest backgrounds either. I don't know what Hadjar's background is personally. I don't know if he's got particularly rich parents. I don't know, right? Some of them do, some of them don't. But regardless of that, he has dedicated his entire life to this from the age of probably about 5 or 6 years old when he first started karting. Every moment, every season, every race, every win, every retirement, every podium, every pole, every fastest lap, everything has been dedicated to that, his debut in Formula One. That has been his aim since day one, and it all came crashing down for him in that one moment. Now, of course, he's got a whole season. He's got a contract with Racing Bulls. He will come back again in China. But in that moment, he's not thinking about that. He has had years of his life, the vast majority of his life, ever since he's been knee-high to a grasshopper. Not the tallest bloke anyway, I don't believe now, but, you know, he has been dedicating his entire life to that, and it all came falling apart in that one moment. And if you don't cry, if you don't feel emotional, sad, depressed, dejected at that point, I'd be shocked. I'd be more concerned if you didn't feel like that personally. Each to their own, of course. I'm not expecting that everybody in that situation will cry. I don't think Jack Doohan was crying after he retired. That's how he deals with it. That's how he copes with it. That's fine. He might have cried when he got back home. Don't know. Not sure. But Hadjar had that reaction, and there is nothing wrong with that. And to label it as embarrassing is embarrassing in itself, Marko. So I think you owe Mr. Hadjar an apology for that, because all you're doing now is putting more pressure on him. And I know before anybody says it, that's what Red Bull do. Yes, that is what Red Bull do. Does it make it right? No, absolutely not. We've seen how these drivers crumble. We've seen how they struggle. We've seen how incredible drivers have absolutely just sank rather than swim at the senior Red Bull team over the years. It's happened to Gasly, who has proven himself to be a very capable driver since then. It happened to Albon, who has proven himself to be a very capable driver after that. Perez, who proved himself to be a very capable driver before he joined Red Bull. And it might well happen to Liam Lawson now. I hope it doesn't. I don't want it to. I really like the kid. But I tell you anything, he is absolutely going to have massive pressure on him after that first race, as is Hadjar, and it's not right. I know this is Formula One, I know this is cutthroat. There's certain pressures that are inherent in the sport. The pressure of driving a 200-mile-an-hour rocket ship of a car, but, you know, representing these billion-dollar corporations, racing for all these fans, in some cases for the entire hopes of a nation. That is all part and parcel of Formula One, but you don't need to go heaping on pressure like that, Marko. It's just not right. It's not on. I'm sick of it, to be honest. I really am. I do give the guy the benefit of the doubt sometimes. I do. Because I think with the experienced drivers, with the drivers up in the championship, you know, you can kind of understand it a bit. It's a bit of gamesmanship. It's a bit of something, a bit of edge, you know. This is just needless, though. This is a 20-year-old man. Made his debut in Formula One. And it didn't go to plan. It didn't go to plan. But you don't need to go doing that. And I passionately ranted about this for far too long. I didn't mean to do that. I meant this to be a 5-minute video, a quick video, but it's been in like 10 minutes. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what I have to say about this. I will try and intersplice as many images and stuff in here to kind of break things up. But yeah, I hope I've made my thoughts clear on it, because I just don't think it's right. I really don't. Your thoughts in the comments below, guys. So the 2026 Formula 1 season will bring a massive change in the regulations for the upcoming seasons. The regulations have remained pretty much static ever since being introduced, the current ground effect cars being introduced in 2022, but 2026, next year, will bring a lot of change. Not only to how the cars are designed, but also the engines that are going to be put in them. Or are they? Well, there's an interesting article here on the F1Chronicle.com that is suggesting that Formula 1 is thinking about changing the engines, scrapping the engine revolution for 2026. This would be a seismic shift if it happens, but let's have a look. Full article on the F1Chronicle.com as always. Formula 1 is considering a plan to bring a green, normally aspirated V10 engine back to the grid sooner than was ever anticipated. Next year, the sport is scheduled to put its current 2014 to 2025 hybrid power unit era in the past, with a move to even heavier and more efficient electrified turbo V6 engines. However, driven by the exciting prospect of loud, light, simple, fan-pleasing V10s powered by 100% sustainable fuel, a contingency plan for the future has been bubbling behind the scenes for weeks, according to Automotor und Sport. Correspondent Michael Schmidt has said that one idea is to put the 2026 engines that are currently being feverishly developed behind the scenes on the back burner for 2 years, enabling a switch to green V10s in 2028. Even at an advanced stage of development, some teams are reporting that the 2026 regulations were too ambitious, he said. Apparently, they are arguing that the prospect of some cars running at greatly reduced speeds to recuperate energy raises safety concerns about crashes. Many are also concerned that the show could suffer, Schmidt added. He said that a V10 working group has been set up. The manufacturers who are putting the most pressure on the teams to do this are those who are already in the know, and they are behind with their 2026 engines, an unnamed insider said. Red Bull and Ferrari apparently support the V10 idea, while Honda, Audi and Mercedes are opposed to putting the 2026 engines on ice for a further 2-year period. We simply don't have enough current engines, argued team boss Toto Wolff. A backup plan under consideration is to allow the 2026 revolution to proceed, but to limit to just 3 years in total instead of 5, with the V10s arriving after that. Well, I can definitely believe the latter. I can definitely believe that by 2030, 2031, something like that, we could potentially have V10s back in the sport. But as for next year, no. I'm sorry, Herr Schmidt. I don't really believe that, to be honest. I'm not saying that he's not telling the truth there, but I don't think that's going to happen personally. He might have heard certain things or whatever from sources. I don't know. But to say that they're going to go back on that, I think would be a massive mistake, you know. Even if these new engines are not the best. And let's not forget, in 2014, people didn't like the engines. People did not. People still don't like the engines in Formula 1 these days. But the fact remains that those engines came in at a time when if they didn't come in, we could have ended up, or probably would have ended up, with only 2 manufacturers of engines in the sport, those being Ferrari and Cosworth. Mercedes and Renault most likely would have left after that year instead of just Cosy going, so unfortunately that had to happen. The revolution with it, the technical innovation, had to come into Formula 1 to keep those engine manufacturers, and in truth some of the teams as well. You know, we might never seen Renault come back and stuff like that into Formula 1 as a works team, of course, so there is that too. Now, when it comes to these current ones, we've got new manufacturers coming in. We've got Honda coming in as a proper manufacturer, not just being a Red Bull, basically. We've got Audi coming in as engine manufacturers. We've got, eventually, we're going to have Cadillac coming in. And we've also got Ford coming in as an engine partner with Red Bull as well. So you've got all these engine manufacturers coming in, presumably on the proviso that you're going to have these 50-50 electrified engines. I don't know how passionate the likes of Cadillac are in it, but the fact that Ford are wanting to do it, Honda, Audi, all these guys are wanting to do it, you know, I mean, we're losing Renault, which is, you know, not ideal, but you know, they're going to go whether we keep with the current engines or not. That's not going to change. So I don't personally see that happening. I think it's too soon. I would love for the V10s to come back, but only if they are under sustainable fuels, because otherwise it's just never going to work. It's not going to be feasible for Formula One. Simple as that. So guys, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. So interesting story here on the F1 Chronicle. Not an article, but this time a tweet, or a post I guess it's officially known as, on the social media that used to be known as Twitter. Hamilton's pretty much accused the F1 media of a bit of anti-British bias, or at least a bias against him. Now, of course, F1 and the F1 media and Hamilton have had a very long and storied history when it comes to reporting on him. You know, he's been in Formula One since 2007. He's pretty much always been in the conversation for the championship. He's someone who is very much talked about. But let's have a look at what's been said here, guys. I'll put a screenshot of the tweet on here, because I don't have a full article yet on this one, and just read it out. And yeah, I'll give my thoughts at the end, because the first thing that I thought of is, oh God, the British Bias Brigade are going to be out in force with this one. But let's have a look at what he's actually said here. Lewis Hamilton has called out media over their double standards ahead of this weekend's Chinese Grand Prix. Hamilton felt the media had made too much of his radio exchange at the Australian Grand Prix, pointing out the lack of reporting at others, specifically Max Verstappen. Hamilton said the following: "Naturally, everyone over-egged. It was literally just a back and forth. I was very polite in how I suggested it. I said, leave it to me, please. I wasn't saying the F word. I wasn't swearing. At that point, I was really struggling with the car, and I needed full focus on this couple of things. We're getting to know each other. He's obviously had 2 champions or more in the past, and there's no issues between us still. Go and listen to the radio calls with others and their engineers. Far worse. The conversation that Max has with his engineer over the years, the abuse that poor guy's taken, and you never write about it, but you wrote about the smallest little discussion I had with mine. Ultimately, we are literally just getting to know each other. So afterwards, I'm like, hey bro, I don't need that bit of information, but if you want to give me this is the place I'd like to do it. This is how I'm feeling in the car, and at these points, this is when I want to do this, and I don't need to do this. That's what it's about. There is no issues. It's done with a smiley face, and we can move forwards." So if you don't remember what happened in the Australian Grand Prix, you didn't catch the race live, maybe you didn't hear the actual radio exchange, but he wasn't doing a whole Kimi Räikkönen, just leave me alone, I know what to do. But he was kind of saying, no, I don't need to know that right now. Leave me to it. I can't do that now. This is not a time for that. Which, this is, you know, Hamilton's first race for Ferrari that he competed with in Australia. This is his first actual race with his new race engineer. I believe it's Riccardo Adami. I think that's his name. I could be wrong. The guy who used to be the race engineer for Carlos Sainz last year and before as well. And, you know, these relationships do take time to form. You know, engineers need to give information to drivers, and drivers only want to hear so much of it. Now, I don't know personally about the entirety of the F1 media, right? I just report on what I see. I go and make videos about my experiences and my opinions. Now, in the case of Max Verstappen last year, this is what I think he's referring to. I don't think he's referring to anything that happened in the Australian Grand Prix last week, and I think he's referring specifically, in particular, to the Hungarian Grand Prix, where Max Verstappen very much had a very angry outburst at his race engineer, Gianpiero Lambiati GP. And yeah, that was worse. That was worse than what Hamilton did. That was outright shouting and swearing at the guy. Now, I've already given my thoughts on that and my opinions on why that happened. There's a lot going on with that, things we don't have time to talk about in this video. But basically, the guy was very stressed out and he just unloaded on the race engineer. I don't think GP's really said much about it since, but Max Verstappen's kind of played it down, saying, look, that's not even that bad. That's just our relationship. And all right, it's a bit odd, but if that is how they communicate on occasion, then so be it. You know, I'm not going to go judging. Clearly, it works for them. Max Verstappen is rather good, although I would not endorse the fact that you're shouting and swearing at your engineer like that. But hey, you know, Formula One, it's a sport with grown men in it. No, with female drivers, unfortunately, at the moment. Hopefully that'll just change one day. But it's a sport with grown men, and, you know, this is how grown men sometimes communicate with each other. As someone who trained to be an engineer, as someone who has quite a few friends who talk like that sometimes as well. Maybe even I'm known to talk like that sometimes as well. It happens, right? We're all human. So I think it has been kind of overblown a bit, the radio conversation, really. I've not really made too much of a deal of it. I think some other outlets definitely have. I don't have a problem with what Hamilton really said. And he is right. He did say it quite politely and calmly, you know, what he was saying. He wasn't screaming down the radio, you know. He was like, look, I don't want to know that. And that's it, and that's all it has to be. So it's going to take time for this relationship to kind of flourish between the two of them. And, we're going to see hopefully an improvement in terms of that this Chinese Grand Prix weekend, because they will have sat down after the race in Australia in the debrief and gone like, no, that's what I need to know. No, that's not what I don't need to know at that point. And that will kind of grow from there. It's like anything. It's a working relationship. But yeah, your guys' opinions in the comments below, as always. I want to hear what you have to say about this. Like I said, for me, I don't think it's such a big deal. But do you think it's a real sign of an issue at Ferrari? I mean, we've done one race. Come on. The main problem with Ferrari really is the pace of the car. That's the main issue right now, and hopefully they will rectify it in China, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So I made a video earlier this week going over Ferrari's troubles on the track, and now we might have a good reason why that is, because there's a big issue when it comes to simulator data for the Scuderia. They were very much wanting to be the top team in Formula 1, and a lot of people, including myself, were thinking they're definitely going to be in the mix again this year for the Constructors' Championship. However, finishing 8th and 10th in the opening round in Australia and qualifying on the front row before that very much does put a lot of doubt on those title aspirations, not only for the team but also for their two drivers, Sir Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. So let's have a look. They're apparently working hard to fix this problem, and this would very much explain why the on-track performance is not matching up with the off-track expectations. Full article on the F1chronicle.com as always, guys. Ferrari has been hard at work in the Maranello simulator to fix a flaw that reportedly led to an inappropriate setup baseline in Melbourne, according to Italy's La Repubblica. All the pre-season hype of a potential World Championship challenge for Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc fizzled last week as the 2025 season began in Australia. "We made a mistake with the setup," team boss Frederick Vasseur lamented. Ahead of this weekend's Chinese Grand Prix, insiders are reporting that Ferrari's simulator churned out incorrect numbers before Melbourne, leading to flawed ride height settings and the wrong rear wing selection. That makes sense now. I saw someone comment recently, one of my regular commenters on YouTube, say that their wet weather setup was just a ride height thing. Now that makes sense. I understand what you're talking about now, sir. Max, I believe your name is. So it's not Max Verstappen, unless it is. I wonder if it is. That'd be interesting. Anyway, it's not. But yeah, that makes sense now. I understand that reference to Captain America style. The problem, however, could have been even deeper than that. I spoke to Fred Vasseur, former Haas boss Gunter Steiner told F1Insider.com. He was a bit disappointed with the development over the winter. He also thought they were closer. Former F1 driver Ralf Schumacher is concerned that a third consecutive failure for Vasseur to deliver title-winning cars could spell the trouble for his position. "I strongly assume if they don't move in the direction of the World Championship and aren't fighting for many race victories, that Ferrari will turn over every single stone," he told Sky Deutschland. "That would be a great shame, as I believe Fred Vasseur is the right person at the right place." The 7-time world champion admitted he is still adjusting to a vastly different car, but there also was obvious signs of tension between Hamilton and his race engineer, the experienced Riccardo Adami, on the radio in Melbourne. "The honeymoon is over," Steiner declared after Melbourne. "Now he has to perform." Hamilton told reporters that Adami, who previously engineered for Carlos Sainz and Sebastian Vettel before that, did his best in Australia. "Generally, I'm not one that likes a lot of information in the race unless I need it. I'll ask for it," he said. "But he did his best and will move forward." Schumacher warns that even Hamilton cannot get too comfortable in red. "At Ferrari, no one is safe," he said, and that also applies to the drivers. He is not wrong. Italians are not famed for making these decisions perhaps a bit prematurely, and I do agree with what Schumacher's saying. Actually, I do think that if Fred Vasseur doesn't deliver at least at a minimum a championship challenge this season, he'll be out the door. Think of Maurizio Arrivabene. He was gone after, what season? 2016, was it? I think it was. As soon as the car started to decline, the same thing happened to Mattia Binotto as well. Of course, the guy who's the head of Sauber these days too. So Ferrari will not be afraid to pull the trigger. They will do that very much. And I don't think that'd be the right move either. I agree. I think he's a good team principal. And I think as well, what might actually save this is his relationship with Sir Lewis Hamilton, because if Vasseur goes, and Vasseur was a key reason behind Hamilton signing with Ferrari, if he goes, Hamilton might go too. Now, I'm sure there'll be some people saying, well, good, he's overrated, he's washed. Let's give the guy time. One race, and he wasn't that far off a shot. Let's be real here. The problem mainly for Ferrari is the car, and yeah, if they've had a data problem in their simulator thing, then that's a big problem. That is a huge issue, and that would explain why they struggle so much. So if they know the problem and they can address it for China, then in theory they should come further up the grid. It is with profound sadness that I bring you the news that Eddie Jordan has passed away at the age of 76. The former Formula One team owner revealed late last year that he was battling an aggressive form of prostate cancer, and his family has confirmed that EJ passed away in the early hours of this morning, the 20th of March 2025, at his home in Cape Town, South Africa. I'm not going to go into too much detail about Jordan's career in Formula One, because I already did that when this got announced. But for those that don't know who EJ was, he was a former team owner. You might recognise the name Jordan from Jordan Grand Prix, who were in Formula One between 1991 and 2005, a true privateer entry that really shook up the order in that era of Formula One. He gave the debut to Michael Schumacher in Formula One in 1991, his one and only appearance for Jordan coming at the 1991 Belgian Grand Prix. He also gave starts to the likes of Rubens Barrichello, Ralf Schumacher, John Lacey, and Martin Brundle also came up through his junior Formula 3 team as well, and then later went on to race in Formula 1 for him as well. Eddie Irvine as well, Nick Heidfeld, Takuma Sato, some fantastic, Hans-Harald Frentzen as well, Jarno Trulli, some fantastic drivers, and Fisichella too. Some brilliant drivers that came through his team in Formula One. And I said they were a privateer entry. They were not a backmarker entry at all, by any stretch of the imagination. They came into Formula One with a bang. They achieved a high of third in the Constructors' Championship in 1999, only behind McLaren and Ferrari. They got 4 race victories. Ralf Schumacher that is, and Damon Hill doing a 1-2. At the Belgian Grand Prix in 1998, their first win, and also a very dramatic win for Giancarlo Fisichella in Brazil 2003 as well, one of the all-time greats. EJ was an absolute maverick and a joy to listen to, and I do apologise if my tone is a bit off, because I knew he was unwell. But just to see this happen, it's hit me quite hard, to be honest, because EJ was someone who I loved listening to. I really, really did enjoy listening to him on the BBC coverage of Formula One here in the UK. He was absolutely fantastic. He was someone who could always find a scoop. He's the one who broke the news of Hamilton going to Mercedes. Nobody believed him, but he was right. And, he was just, like I said, he was just a fantastic person to listen to. Man as a box of frogs. And I don't think he'll mind me saying that. God bless you, Eddie, by the way. There was never a dull moment with EJ. Never a dull moment whatsoever. He was always entertaining to listen to. Like I said, vast experience in Formula One. 15 years his team was there as a privateer entry. And the bones of that have now become Aston Martin eventually as well. Based at the Silverstone base for the Formula One teams. And yeah, it's really sad news. It shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, to be honest, because I don't know EJ, I won't claim to, but knowing what I imagine he's like, I imagine he didn't want to reveal that he had cancer until he knew that it was going to be probably the end. I would imagine EJ is the kind of person to not want to talk about that to other people much, because he would feel that wouldn't really help. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe my assumption is wrong there, but I imagine that he kept it under wraps for quite some time. But I really did. I said at the end of my last video about him when it got announced that he had cancer, that I hoped he would see Aston Martin win a Formula One World Championship in his lifetime, because that's the ashes of Jordan have risen to become eventually Aston Martin, being Force India, and some other teams on the way as well. So he was a music drummer. He performed in a band. I'm sure he performed at Formula One Grand Prix, like the concert thing. He was a racer himself as well. He raced in karting. Eventually became a junior team owner, Formula 3000 back in the day. Like I said, the likes of John Lacey and Martin Brundle came up through there. And yeah, honestly, God bless him. I really will miss him. He's a personality that, like I said, there was never a dull moment with EJ. And yeah, I hope his family are as all right as they can be. I offer my condolences, as does everybody here at the F1 Chronicle. I hope you're all as all right as you can be in this situation. Yeah, and I need a minute, to be honest, because literally this news just broke. Really sad news. Rest in peace, Eddie. Those who know you through your time in Formula 1 will never forget you. We'll never forget you. You will always be remembered very fondly. And God bless your soul, Eddie. And I'm not even gonna do an outro. I'm just gonna leave it there. I hope you guys have an all right day despite this news, and share your favorite memory of EJ in Formula 1. One of mine personally will always be, and I think I said it in the last one, when the BBC Sport did their Formula 1 awards and I watched this clip back actually after I did the video. I think it was for 2011. I'm pretty sure it was. And EJ basically got the special or the special awards. It wasn't a particularly Formula 1 one, and it was just something like the best fashion in Formula 1. And it went to EJ because EJ always used to wear the loudest of and most flamboyant of shirts. Like the man had style. I admire his confidence. And they gave him an award for it. And then they just played a compilation of him in his absolutely absurd outfits throughout the season, to fashion by David Bowie. So yeah, really sad news. But yeah, just remember the good times, remember the positives, and see you soon, guys. Have a good day. Have as nice of a day as you can. But yeah, let me know your favourite memories of EJ in the comments below.